Might have a few more jumping on, but for the sake of time, we'll get started and I'll admit people as they come in. But good morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Harrell, and I am the Executive Director of the Louisiana Grazing Lands Conservation Initiative. We also have Tara Morris and Bethany Morris, no relation that we know of, on staff with us on the call today. And I just wanted to let y'all know to be expecting a follow-up email at the end. We'll be doing a survey and it'll be coming from Tara. We have Marty Ernest, Ted Miller, and Justin Fuselier on the call today. And if you read the introduction on the website or got a flyer, we're really looking forward to their presentations today, but we're going to do, they're going to share for about the first half of the call. And then we really want to have the opportunity for y'all to be able to have questions and answer time. So we're going to try to keep everyone's time to an hour. And at the about 5 minutes till, we're actually going to do a drawing to get one of our t-shirts, which actually I'm wearing it right now. But we'll stop, do our t-shirt drawing so we'll know the winner before it lets out. And then if you want to stay on and have extra questions that weren't answered within the hour, we can stay on for a few more minutes. But I'm gonna go ahead and let Marty kick it off. So thank you guys for being here.
Ellen, I just want to start off by saying thank you for having me today, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'll just start off by introducing myself. My name is Marty Ernest. I have lived in Caldwell Parish, Louisiana my whole life on the beautiful Beth River, and I guess my younger farming years was a 100% cotton operation, and that was back in the 1980s, and we were a 100% cotton operation that transitioned into a grain operation with the change of the Farm Bill in the 1990s. And I was pretty much just a traditional corn and soybean grower up until about, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago, and I transitioned into a seed business. And we're a cover crop seed business. We raise oats and wheat for the industry. My system that I'm in, I have been actively participating in planting cover crops. We dabbled in it a little bit back in the mid 1980s and kind of transitioned away from it. I really don't know why, because it was a wonderful system at the time, just kind of, I guess, following the traditions of the way the local farming community was. But I really got really hardcore back into soil health and cover crops, I guess about 8 to 10 years ago, and it's kind of been a roller coaster at times. We've had some years that were really not tremendously successful in cover crops and soil health, but it seemed like just being persistent and just staying with it. Probably 4 to 5 years into the cover crops in our farm, the system really started coming alive, and we're just really seeing some tremendous benefits from implementing the cover crops in our system. And I guess I ask myself sometimes, why do I do what I do? And I've for years I've kind of been the gossip at the coffee shop, so to speak, because I kind of been the oddball in the farming community. And but I've just really looked at my system, the economy we're in right now, the farming economy with everything, the prices being sky high, and diesel fuel being in shortage, and the price it is with and just listening to talk radio yesterday with they're talking about the possibility of crude oil going to $150 a gallon. $150 a barrel. But with the fuel prices, the labor shortage, the equipment expenses, and everything. I realized several years ago that to stay in this industry, that something was going to have to change. And, in our industry, we really have a very limited effect on what we can do as far as getting the commodity price that we need. So we cannot affect what we reap out of the farm, but we can affect our inputs. And no-till and cover crops has really, really made a huge difference in my operation. In the last 6, 7, 8 years. Just for an example, back in the 1980s and 1990s, this is just one good example. When we would go to the field to plant, it would be, you know, 3 to 4 tractor operation going on with 4 to 5 people. And literally in this system that I'm in now with no-till and cover crops, we can burn down our fields early. I can literally go to the field by myself or send one man to the field with a seed tender and a planter. And he literally by himself can plant the same number of acres in a day and do a better job than what we did in the old school way that we were doing things of conventional till. So, I mean, I asked myself, why do I do what I do? Because there's going to come a breaking point in the farming community, and we're already seeing that now. I mean, even this year in the state of Louisiana, we have record high input costs this year with record high prices, and then having these storms hit like we have. A lot of people have been devastated, especially with soybeans and corn both, and even cotton, from what I'm understanding. Just something's got to give somewhere down the road, and I have total faith in the system that I'm in now, that I can control to the best of my ability my inputs, and also be a better steward of the land, be a better steward of the environment. We're seeing water infiltration rates where we've had cover crops. Just for an example, the field that I'm in right now, I'm sitting on a combine right now. This is start cutting beans here as soon as our call is over with today. But even in this field, irrigation that used to take 12 hours to accomplish is now taking 30 to 40 hours to irrigate the same amount of ground. And the reason that being is the system we're in now, because our soil health is now premium. The water is percolating down in the ground, and the soil has become more porous, and our water is filtrating down instead of running off into the ditches and the rivers and the streams. And I mean, you can go right across the road in a neighboring farm there, and after say a 3-inch rain, I don't have near the runoff that he does, and what little runoff I do have is clear water, and it's not muddy water. So I know that by doing what I'm doing, that I'm a better steward of the land. And also, I just want to mention for a minute the forages and the variety of covers that we're planting. I guess I can start out by saying the first year that I did covers back 7 or 8 years ago, I did it out of my back pocket. I didn't have any kind of EQIP or CSP assistance on that. But I was determined in my mind I was going to plant covers. And what I did that year was trying to plant a cover on a budget, which can be a very challenging thing. But I took a John Deere vacuum planter and put sugar beet plates in it. And that was back when radishes were first coming about, and was really the crave and what everybody was wanting to plant. But we singulated radish with a vacuum planter and planted it at a rate to 2 to 3 pounds per acre down the top of our rows. And then we came back that spring after burn down and planted soybeans on top of that same row. And Ellen, I literally had the best soybean crop I'd ever had in my life that first year we did that. And I guess you might consider that maybe beginner's luck. I'm not sure, but it sure sold me though. But we've gradually graduated through the years from planting a single species mix to planting, I guess a few years after that, we started doing a 2 to 3 way mix, and we planted up to a 6 to 8 way mix in some years. But having that diversity of having a grass species and a brassica and a legume, that species is good for the soil. And I know a lot of our listeners out there, I'm pretty much just a traditional row crop farmer. We are wanting to add cattle to our operation to do some grazing, but the majority of the people on the call today are probably cattle farmers. But having that mix, that variety of forages is important. I guess it would be kind of like going to a salad bar. You wouldn't just want to go to a salad bar and just eat the lettuce only. You would want to have a variety there of different vegetables and different mixes to choose from. And it's the same thing with our soil, and it's the same thing with our cattle. They enjoy that variety. And so just to kind of hit a few high points there, this is just, I feel like that in the years that I've been fooling with covers and trying to promote cover crops and soil health, that we are at right now a tipping point. From what I'm understanding, there's CSP and EQIP has been funded pretty nicely this year, and I think there's going to be some money out there available for people to tap into. And I'm seeing more of a resurgence and more of a interest in cover crops right now in my local community than I ever have before. We had a soil health event at my place spring before last, and in Caldwell Parish, it went from me being the only person planting cover crops to the following spring, which was this past spring, to having 5 or 6 different farmers getting on board with planting covers. And from what I'm hearing right now, this fall, there's quite a bit of interest. So any questions there, Ellen?
Marty,
No,
I have a
Marty.
question for you, actually, before you leave. In reference to winter forages, you're kind of an expert because you're raising the seeds that we want to be planting. You raise oats and wheat, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about kind of maybe the nutrient content of those, or you know, why, I guess, when you're talking your cover crops in a cropping system, what season are you planting a cover crop? Are you planting right now, or are you planting in the summer?
Well, we double our irrigated ground. We double crop it, and I'll just give you an example. I'm on a combine right now, harvesting soybeans, and I literally have a 20-foot grain drill running in the same field right now, planting oats. So we try to keep something growing on the ground 12 months out of the year. And, you know, the oats will be planted now. They will scavenge NP and K through the next 5 to 6 months. We'll harvest in the middle of May, the first week of June. And literally when we harvest, when I'm harvesting those oats and wheat, we'll have a planter running back in the field at the same time we're harvesting, planting soybeans back into that straw. And so it's so foreign to me, the conventional way of farming and the conventional way of thinking. And I was guilty for years myself doing that, but I drive up and down the highways right now, especially north of me, going up Beth River and the Washita River. We're in an exceptionally dry fall right now, so a lot of farmers are getting out there and they're working their fields up. But to see soil that is freshly tilled and it's just like powder, and this soil will lay there exposed for the next 5 to 6 months before it's planted, and there's going to be so much soil loss, so much nutrient loss, erosion. It's going to take place on these farms because people are just, I don't know, they're just uneducated that we got to keep our soils covered. There's so many benefits from keeping our soils covered, from the aspect of erosion, the biological system that takes place in the soil. And you look at the biologicals, even like earthworms in the soils. An earthworm cannot live in soil that does not have something there for that earthworm to eat. There has to be a food chain there for that creature to scavenge on, for him to survive. But and there's such a difference between soil and dirt. Most of our farms have dirt because they are dead. There's nothing living there. But soil is a ecosystem. It is a living biological web that is there for these for the earthworms and the biologicals to feed on and to have a cycle of nutrients going on 12 months out of the year.
For sure. Marty, are you staying on the call for question and answer at the end, or do you need to go? I'm
going to do my best to try to stay on, yes.
Okay, good, because I have a few more questions relating to the winter forage stuff, but I think it's probably time, if I'm not incorrect, Ellen, is it time to move on to the next person for right now?
Yeah, do we have any more specific questions for Marty, just real quick? And then if not, we'll move on to Ted. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Is there a particular fertilizer that you use with your oats?
We're continuing to stay with pretty much our traditional fertilizer program. We put out DAP in the fall and the the fertilizer price being what it is right now is extremely limiting us as to what we can do. I mean, DAP was $375 a ton a year and a half ago, and it's approaching $1,000 a ton right now. So we'll put out DAP, which is mostly phosphate and nitrogen. We'll put out 100 pounds of that. Then we'll follow up with some nitrogen in the spring. But everything I'm reading and everything I'm studying, the people that are long-term in cover crops and no-till, they're getting away from a lot of the fertilizer they're doing, because a lot of the plants, the oats, the brassicas, and different things we're planting, there's a lot of phosphorus that's down at a deep level that the plants, the oats and the wheat cannot pull up to a usable level. And those plants are, the cover crop species are scavenging a lot of nitrogen, which is making a lot of the natural system able to scavenge a lot of these nutrients instead of having to buy them. So yes, for the moment, we are pretty much staying on a traditional application, I guess you'd say.
Thank you, Marty. We're gonna move on to Ted, and then at the end, we can do some further questions, or if you have questions that you don't want to forget, you can put them in the chat.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Marty.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
I'll take that as a yes. Okay. My name's Ted Miller. We're located actually not far from Marty, about 20 miles east of him on the Delta in Northeast Louisiana. Very similar climate and soil conditions is what he has, but we're unlike him. We are in the perennial forage business, primarily in the form of grass-based dairy. We run a seasonal dairy here, pasture-based, basically a New Zealand model of dairy production. If you're familiar with that, we're trying to maximize the amount of nutritional intake the cattle get from forages grown on farm here through grazing. We calve our herd seasonally in the fall, so our production curve or our lactation curve runs from September, October through the end of July. And then we dry the herd off, and we're actually not in production for August and the first part of September, kind of matching the climate conditions here in Northeast Louisiana, and the forage quality also that will go with that. A little bit of the history that got us into winter annual production on the level that we're doing it is really a desire for extremely high quality digestible forages that are available to a class of cattle such as a lactating dairy cow through the winter time, and that's when we're looking for that. The perennials here on the warm season side, Bermuda, Bahia, summer annuals that come in the summertime here are great forages, but obviously they're not usable through the winter months. So what we were looking for, or to kind of go back to the beginning of our journey on this, we originally thought that we could designate some acres here to tall fescue. So we experimented extensively with endophyte friendly fescue varieties, thinking that if we could keep a cool season perennial with some management here, giving us that forage quality that we need in the wintertime, the warm season perennial is easy. That grows here by itself, takes very little management. But we found that the cool season perennial obviously took more management than we were able to put into it. We tried for years, probably 6-7 years, different approaches, grazing management strategies, resting strategies to try to keep that fescue here, and we just couldn't do it in our system through the length of the Louisiana summers that we experience here. We're located just south of Interstate 20, so we're kind of in that I-20 corridor, and we're really just below that border, that fescue border. And, from where from my perspective at this point, I'm thinking it's really closer to the Arkansas line is where you're going to be able to even get into a situation where you can probably maintain that stuff for what we need to do with it. But anyway, that's kind of where we started with. So we obviously still need to fill that void of high quality, cool season forage in the wintertime, which now we're looking at obviously that's going to be an annual of some sort. So then the question becomes, how do we get that annual planted out there and established and usable in a way that's both economical, regenerative, and sustainable? Obviously we could take and till up fields and plant annuals, whether they be cereal grains or ryegrass or whatever, and we would get them to establish. But we're not interested in tilling our soil in any way. We would lose the stability of our ground to be able to graze cattle on through the winter time, through the wetter time of the year. Not to mention everything we're doing that's counterproductive. Those things that Marty was talking about, losing organic matter, losing biology in our soil. So that's out of the question. And we hate tillage, so we don't. So that's another problem. We'd be miserable all the time. So we wouldn't want to be out there tilling soil and being unhappy with. We want to try to enjoy what we're doing. So so we started to work with some varying methods of no tilling. We had started with a John Deere no-till drill, 750, an older drill. Not to make this an equipment discussion, but that style of drill is very effective at penetrating the ground and getting seed into a hard soil situation. But it does very little disturbance in and around the seed where the seed's placed. And if you're going to plant small grains, oats and wheat, they like some disturbance in the planting zone. So we ran oats and ryegrass in with that machine and had limited success. So we were trying to come up with a way to get a little bit more disturbance right where we're placing our seed, because we wanted to get the benefit of quickly established forage that you would get from oats primarily, to give us November, December, January grazing here. That's hard to get with ryegrass because ryegrass comes a little later in the wintertime. But the problem is, how do you get that oats plant to establish itself in a sod without, extensive tillage? So I kind of stumbled on a few years ago to a Great Plains drill that was modified somewhat. And I guess we could look at some pictures of that, Ellen, if we got some up. These are some pictures that were snapped with a phone and texted about 3 different times before they made it to where that's the back of the drill. That's a rolling basket on the back that's kind of a firming type thing. That's that other picture there that you had, Ellen, the last one. Yes. If you can see that, I realize that it doesn't do us a whole lot of justice. I was hoping it would give us a little bit of a reference. That front toolbar to the left is the factory no-till setup on this drill, and there's a waffle coulter that runs there in front of each opener. It's a 3/4 waffle, so it does a vertical tillage, we call that, or a vertical disturbance without really flipping any soil over, about 3/4 inches wide. The previous owner of this machine happened to add a second toolbar, which you'll see in the center there, the picture, the more gray. That was all added aftermarket, and that's simply a second coulter identical to the first one. And we have it set staggered right offset of the first coulter. So the two of them are running together, and we're essentially making an 1.5 inches wide disturbed zone, about 3/4 to 1 inch deep. And then behind that, and it's really not in the picture there, would be the drill itself with the double disc opener. and that's dropping the seed into that zone. And then a picture of the drill from the back there, you'll see that those Great Plains just have a one pressed wheel, and then there's a rolling basket, a row finisher basket that has some down pressure to it that's behind that machine that kind of flattens everything out. That's a little more effective if it is a little on the wet side and you get a little bit of disturbance from the ground. It kind of packs everything back in. But this machine, which there's nothing special about it, it's not new and it wasn't particularly expensive, has really been a game changer for us in getting small grains to germinate effectively and quickly and come up through a sod seeded situation. This is a Bermuda grass field where the drill's sitting. You can see there. Then that was just simply that cover was simply removed by grazing. We grazed some open heifers on there and took that down a little bit more, but there's been no machine activity on this field prior to planting, and that's the way our goal through the whole system is and it's like Marty was talking about in planting his row crops. It used to be a multi person venture, and now it's a one person deal. Same thing for us. We want to prepare these summer fields with cattle, and we want to drop in there with one man in this machine, place those seeds where we want them with the right amount of disturbance around the seed, that with moisture, then we're going to get germination of an oats plant in 5 to 7 days. And that's been the case for the most part. When you get that, and with optimal moisture, we can be then grazing that in as little as 30 days, 45 days easily. So we're on track with stuff that's germinating right now. We're looking at early mid-November grazing, and like I said, we were looking at this from a nutritional standpoint. We need the quality of that forage that time of year. When you look at the quality of that grazed oats forage in the wintertime, compared to even our best baleage, we make all of our stored forage as baleage, and it's summer annuals and summer perennials forages that are harvested, baled, and then siled in an anaerobic environment. Makes pretty good feed, but we test all that, and they're going to be nutritionally inferior to 12-inch tall oats that's grazed in November, December. Just as an example, and I don't know how much y'all like to talk nutritional jargon, but dairy farmers tend to love it. So we'll talk a little bit about that, like fiber digestibility. One thing we look at is NDF at 30 hours in the cow. That would be neutral detergent fiber, or the amount of fiber in that forage that's digestible in the rumen, which equates to energy for a ruminant. They can use digestible fiber, make energy with that. 30-hour NDF on oats is going to run around 70. Our very best spring baleage is going to be around 60. So it's the fanciest hay we make, grazed oats in the wintertime, is going to beat that. And with that, we can curb our grain consumption, and also boost milk yield by having that. So I apologize for kind of digressing a little bit nutritional thing there, but that's really what drove us to this. Now, the really neat thing is all the ecological benefits we've seen from incorporating this type of system. And just like Marty was talking about, we're blessed here with a climate that allows for 300 days of budgeted growth on plants. You can grow plants here for 10 months out of the year. We can graze them and they stay green for 12 months out of the year. So in this system, we have green forage growing out there, living root in the soil 12 months out of the year. Soil is left intact, never disturbed or damaged. So we see, just like Marty was talking about, water infiltration rates, water retention rates, very excellent. And then it's a huge eye opener when we have a rain. And if we get a big enough rain where we actually get water to run off our place, it's crystal clear, and it hits the ditch next to the cropland, which is coming off chocolate milk. And it's just, the difference is absolutely stark. So those things have benefited us. I think we've been doing this long enough. I think we're starting to see some real organic nitrogen release that's working in our favor. We've reduced synthetic nitrogen application rates significantly. Typically now we're down to, we would plant this like I described, and maybe 2 to 3 weeks after that, when it's up good, we might give it 20 to 30 units of nitrogen in the fall, and that's all it's going to get. And it may get 30 units again in March, depending on what the stand looks like in the spring. But that's the extent of it, 40 to 60 units of nitrogen for the entire crop. And we get a lot of production off that. So that's telling me that we're getting some biological activity going on. I think that's to our benefit. But that's kind of the evolutionary process we've been undertaking here we've been doing this for 10 years trying to figure this out, and we still haven't, but I think we're as close as we're getting more in return by far than we were. We'll never arrive on these things. I think we're just scratching the surface, I think, from an educational standpoint, and what we have yet to learn about the way forages optimally perform, in this biological environment we call soil. So I'm excited about where we'll continue to go in the future. But I'm really happy to see a dual forage season working in this climate, because the climate lends itself to that. And without the ability to use a cool season perennial, we can use a cool season annual that's economical and gives a return for what we're putting in it. So I would entertain any questions if we're doing that now, or we can do that later. Or Ellen, if there's something I didn't touch on that you'd like me to, please tell me.
Sarah just unmuted. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
So you plant one time with the no-till drill in mid-October, and you're planting just oats?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't touch on that. Let me clarify that. Yeah, we actually our cover crop program in its entirety would be the drilled oats. But before we would do that, we're actually aerially broadcasting 25 pounds of ryegrass out there early, maybe late August, early September, over deep summer cover. And then that ryegrass seed's going to get worked down to soil level by the grazing of the summer residuals, by dry cattle and heifers and things like that. Then we'll go in with the drill, and that'll kind of continue that seed to soil contact effort for the ryegrass. And then it comes behind the oats. The oats are a lot more aggressive, so you don't see a lot of the ryegrass the early part of the winter, but then it kind of reverses in the spring. The oats are not dominant, and the ryegrass kind of becomes the main forage source then for March, April. But the planting dates on that, to answer that question, like I said, we would fly the ryegrass on earlier, say Labor Day, and then we'd like to start our drilling as close to the 15th of September as we can. It takes us about 3 weeks to get across the acres we're doing. And you factor in weather and things like that. So really 15th of September through the 15th of October is our window when we'd like to see that happen. There are some risks with that really early. You could get it germinated very early with the rain in September and then turn off hot and dry, and that can be risky to very young seedlings. It's also a time of year when armyworms are very present reality. And those small grain seedlings, ryegrass seedlings, will be the first things that they'll go for if there's an outbreak of armyworms, late September, early October. So there's some risk that goes with that time frame, but I think the benefit of getting it in and getting it going outweighs that. We really, what I look at with winter forages, we got October and November to make that crop happen. That's when we have soil temperature, we have some day length, and we have warmer air temperatures. So we try to, if we get too far in November, if we get to November, let's say, and don't really have germination, our window's closing rapidly on grazable forage for that December, January timeframe. So that's why we kind of target that time frame to get it in.
Is there a specific variety of oats that you found work well for you?
Well, the variety that we're using right now that we're thrilled with is coming from my good friend Marty across the Beff River. He's not too far away, and he grows a lot of it, and he loves to sell it. So we try to oblige him and go over there and buy it. But no, it's just bob oats. It's not fancy, but it's a very effective forage for what we're doing. So we're thankful that we have that source where we do. It's a help for us. And I wouldn't, if you're looking to buy seed, I have a little bit of a bias on some of these ryegrass seeds, especially. We get into start talking about diploids and tetraploids, and you can get into some really expensive ryegrass seed. And I just have not found a return for those dollars. We just plant golf ryegrass. We don't spend extra money on other, and I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but that's what we do. But we've had good success without breaking the bank on the fanciest forage varieties we can find out there. You get a good seed that's germ tested, and you're going to get good germination rate on what you're planting. It's going to produce the forage you want.
Excuse my ignorance, but is there, the concept that you have to plant it every year, is there any seed that we could get going that would just be a perennial and kind of be in the fields perpetually?
Well, that's a very good question you bring up, and it's a point that we've pondered and wrestled with a lot. Yeah, these are annual forages, so their biological nature is to grow rapidly, go reproductive, set a seed head, produce viable seeds, and then die, in the early part of the summer. That's the life cycle of these grasses, of course. And the thinking is, can we run them in our system in a way that allows for natural seed set and build seed bank in the soil? And we get some of that. We don't, even our ryegrass, we don't harvest it as baleage in the spring. We don't, we just graze. We continue to graze through it as it matures. And at the end of the later rotations in that, we'll see some seed, a lot of seed setting in the forages. And I think I always think we ought to be setting all kinds of seed here. Stuff should grow itself next year. But I think that the fact that it's been under a lot of grazing pressure, the seeds that we get off those plants aren't near as viable as if that plant was just allowed to do its natural growth and seed set on its own. Because those plants are continually grazed in the spring multiple times, a lot of the energy of that plant has gone into just regrowing, and by the time it goes reproductive, it's not as viable as what it would have been otherwise. I think that's some of it. I think some of these seed companies, aren't interested in developing varieties of ryegrass that are particularly good at that, because that would cut down on annual ryegrass sales.
Yeah.
So there's limited ability. We found limited ability to produce our own seeds, but we do get some by managing it correctly.
Thank you.
And I wanted to add one interesting point, Ted. I don't know if you know that Sarah is also a dairy farmer of water buffalo. And so she and I and you have this really interesting need for forage year round. And if I'm not mistaken, we don't particularly consider our forages cover crops like Marty does. Ours are not just for cover, ours are for nutritional reasons, and we're planting them for that reason. Do you consider yours cover crops, Ted, at all?
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, Tara, and it reminds me of I think it was Dwayne Rice. He used to be our state grazing specialist here several years ago in Louisiana, and he said there's a difference between in row crop ground you're cover cropping, and in pastures you're overseeding. That was that's his line on that. So yeah, it's not a crop per se, and we're not growing it solely for the purpose of soil amendment from a wintertime annual. We're in the same boat as you, Tara, and anyone else will be growing for winter forage. We're looking for the nutritional value of that forage that we can consume in the wintertime, which is exceptional nutritional value, by the way.
So I really think that Justin, as you come into this, you might have some really good insight, Justin, into the question that Sarah had about a perennial situation, because Justin has expertise in prairie natives as well. And I don't know if you even had that on your agenda to talk about today, Justin, but you might be able to answer that question a little bit better. Is there any native grass that could kind of solve that problem, as we're segueing into your section as well?
Well, I would say, that's been a tough one for our area of the world is where our cool season grasses, when we're dealing with natives, and we hadn't, as far as what we know, there's not many down here. Now, obviously we had, little light winter annuals, Poa annua, and different, the geraniums and curly dock. I mean, there is winter species, but where's that winter grass? I think it's Virginia wild rye is perhaps one that has been mentioned, but I don't see where it persists in open pasture. Generally, it's along tree lines and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a tough one. As far as our true cool season perennial grass, I don't know of any, that want to colonize and naturalize in our pastures. And like Ted said, that was pretty interesting trying to grow the fescue for that time. I didn't know anybody had attempted it down here, so I've always kind of wondered that in the back of my mind. And if you can't do it, I know I can't.
Justin, if you want to go into your story, and you'll wrap us up, and then we'll have some time for questions.
Okay, sure. Well, as you guys might have heard, my name's Justin Fuselier. We have Coastal Prairie Farms in Acadia Parish, just kind of south central part of the state. We stumbled upon soil health and regenerative ag kind of on accident. Probably in 2004, we started planting some native perennial warm season grasses in an effort to just kind of create habitat on some extra pasture land that we had. To facilitate bird hunts and such. As the years went by, we got interested in grazing these perennial grasses. And at first we were just kind of scared of that concept, because we thought that if we graze them, we're going to kill them, and then somewhere along the way, we stumbled upon island savory and holistic management and stuff. And then, so we started getting interested in that aspect of production. It was a long evolution in thought, learning about this stuff. It wasn't a whole lot of chatter going on, at least not in our part of the world at that time, in soil health and regenerative ag. But I would say by about 2012, we had learned enough to where we were ready to, kick the legs out from underneath the table and go all in. And now, we had off the farm jobs. We were, the farming was more of a hobby at that stage, I guess, and a dream, a goal. So we were able to just go all in, pull out all the props, and really, like, our mission became at that point in time where, we were going to produce with the regenerative angle and soil health focus or just not at all, and so weren't interested really any other way. So, I mean, at that point, we abandoned, any further tillage in our pastures, any synthetic fertilization and stuff like that. So really, our cool season forage program or cover cropping, what have you, it carried on for a number of years of for just overseeding with ryegrass and clover. And yeah, I think it was about 2017. I got really interested in the approach of diverse cool season annuals and stuff, and I went in and bought a lot of different seeds, brassicas, oats, wheats, and just threw it all together and broadcast it. And it was a dismal failure. Not much came up. And the next year, I got a little smarter, and I rented the no-till drill from the Soil and Water Conservation District, and I went in and drilled it in the pastures, and same sort of mix, just a real diverse mix. We had a little more success, but it didn't thrive. And I think looking back, I maybe didn't realize it all at the time, but looking back, I think competition was just too great in our pasture, and the interplanting with the drill didn't have enough disturbance to create a proper seed bed to allow those seedlings to get going and compete against the Bahia and carpet and whatnot in the early stages. And the following year, I attempted it again, and then kind of got rained out. Rain set in once the seeding was done. I had good germination, but then everything rotted. So on top of that, we had that no-till drill, the same no-till drill rented, but at this point in time, the deer hunters were getting their hands on it. And I know when we got it, it was really beat up, and I had to do some work on it and weld on it just to get to perform. And at that point, after losing that crop due to weather, I said, hey, look, we're going to punt. We're just going to go back to ryegrass and clover. And that's pretty much what we stuck with. With the exception being this year, because we finally got a no-till drill of our own, and I'm in process right now of planting a pretty diverse cool season crop. It has the annual rye, it has oats, wheat, turnips, clover. The more the merrier, right? And the main focus with the diversity on our planting, again, is just, I think, as to Ted and Marty alluded to, is to get the the biological function in place to cycle the nutrients, so we aren't depending on the fertilizers, and having ruled the fertilizers out, it's really our only avenue to nutrient cycling. And so we really believe that diversity is going to help us out. But we can never draw up our weather, and we got about 9 acres planted, and then we're in this kind of terrible drought. And so we stopped planting because we had germination on about the 4 first acres we planted, and things are just kind of struggling and sitting there. So we stopped planting, and we're waiting on a little moisture to get back on it. So I'm not sure when we'll be able to get on it and graze. I will say this, having a little bit of experience on hand of knowing what doesn't work, I think as Ted was emphasizing, when planting into perennial pasture, eliminating competition is paramount for getting those seedlings to germinate and establish. And you have kind of 2 options there. You could do it chemically or you could do it mechanically. Again, we on our scenario, we're quickly going to rule out chemically. And so then that leaves us with mechanical disturbance, and overall plowing the whole system is not an option. So the drill that we were able to find is one that's actually made in Louisiana, and it's called the Planovator. And at first I was really turned off by looking at it because I thought it was too much mechanical disturbance. But now, I haven't had a chance to use it on my warm season forages and on my rice crop, I'm kind of in love with this little machine because it does, similar to as Ted explained, has a double coulter, and it has a little ripper, and it will rip out about 6 inches of soil, throw it to the side, and then it has 2 little spatulas that follow in that furrow behind it that scrape the side walls of that trench and widen it to about 3 inches. We create a really wonderful seed bed, and with no disturbance, eliminated disturbance. And I'm just amazed at the germination I'm seeing in my perennial pastures, and these little seedlings just come on, they have time to get going, really put on some growth and get, a competitive size. By the time I think, they're getting influence from the plants that remain between the furrows, from the perennial pasture plants. And so I really think it's going to be a game changer for us. And I think it really solidifies the focus on eliminating the competition to get that quick turnaround and stand in production of that cool season species. But yeah, with that, that's about as far as our cool season forage program has allowed us to go without the proper equipment. And so I'm really excited to see what manifests this year. And if y'all have any questions, I'm open.
What is that no-till drill that you found that you like?
It's called a plant ovator, and it's made in Folsom, I believe, by Torver Sales. And from what I gather, it's a smaller company. They're real accessible. I've been able to get parts and pieces and just get just talk with them for any advice and stuff like that. They've been really easy to access. So I mean, I've been pleased with that aspect of it. The going back to the Great Plains no-till drill, it was just kind of a more standard no-till drill where it had a little double coulter that create a V. It would drop the seed and then kind of press it back together. But I really think that'd be fine in maybe a row crop scenario. But going into perennial pasture is pretty aggressive. I don't think it's enough competition elimination to favor that seedling development. I just think you need a little more disturbance in the pasture scenario.
You also use fertilizer with that?
Well, so no, we haven't used fertilizer. We had quit using synthetic fertilizers. Now I did this year. I am experimenting with some chicken litter, some pelletized chicken litter, and I'm putting it in the fertilizer box on the planter. So it's dropping it in furrow below the seed, about 2 inches below the seed. And I'm kind of doing a little trial run, doing some area with it, some area without, to see what happens there. And there's also another experiment we're working with on the farm where we made fish amino acids. And we're putting it out via foliar applications on some of our acreage. We've used it on the warm season cover crops, and we're very pleased with it. We need to stand the cool season cover crops to experiment a little with that. And again, that was fish amino acid fertilizer. Very cheap to make. It kind of, from what I understand about it, it has the best preservation of as far as nitrogen content of the fish emulsion type fertilizers, I guess. And it's again pretty cheap to make, and then we're really kind of excited about it. We just need a little more field research done with it before we could say, hey, this is how to use it, this is how well it works,
Right.
Guys, Terrence would like to know, when is it too late for farmers in southern Louisiana to plant winter cover crops? I think, Ted, you had mentioned perhaps that December is a little bit late on your side. You're getting in. What are the reasons for that? And I'd love to hear from Marty as well as Justin on this.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first on that. Yeah, like I mentioned before, it seems like the months of October, November into the beginning of December is a critical time period to get up what we're going to grow. Usually winter is not that harsh that we can graze that throughout the remainder of the winter without any trouble. But good rule of thumb up here in the northeastern part of the state is we don't budget the production of any dry matter of growth from December 15th through February 15th. We could have, we could have abnormal weather for periods of time that would allow that. We really don't count on it. So if our growth is going to be done by December 15th, and you're going back, 45 days from that, you're looking at November 1st. we pretty much have to have stuff planted up here in October if it's gonna do anything for us. So that's kind of what our rule of thumb would be.
I'd my take on that's pretty similar to Ted. I think, you know, you kind of, if you wait too late, you've kind of missed the window of production where it's really going to be beneficial for you to have planted it anyway. If you know, we can have a warm spell and have germination in December, but you just may not have much growth as things shut down and days get short, and to really, you know, to get the utilization. So I would say, you know, by down where we're at in the south, I'd want to have it in by the end of November at the latest.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
My take on as far as a seasonal date on planting, I have a friend in Stuttgart, Arkansas, which is central Arkansas. And he said back in the 1960s, his father would plant oats in the last week of August. And I have heard of oats planted in Arkansas, southern Arkansas, as late as January. But like both of y'all were saying, Ted and Justin both, no 2 years are the same. And what I found out, not from a grazing perspective, but from a production perspective, we had 2 years in a row here, year before last and the year before that we were too dry to plant, just like this year. And I sat back and waited to well into November to plant. And we went from being too dry to too wet. And then we tried to mud oats in with a drill and planted them in wet conditions. And then before we even had germination and emergence, we got 3 to 4 inches of rain both years in a row. And I had a lot of seed rot in the field. So I agree with what both of y'all said. We need to get oats up and established as soon as possible. And I found out from the last year especially, and I like Ted said earlier, I'm still learning a tremendous amount every year. Every year is like a classroom as far as being educated here on the farm. But to see these oats get up and get established in October and to get a good root system established is a very important thing for us as far as production goes.
Well, guys, we are approaching the end of the hour. I think Bethany has a little wheel to do our t-shirt drawing that she's gonna share, and we'll get the address and send the shirt. But then if people have to get off, we would just want to close it out so that they have the opportunity to. But I think everyone can stay on for a few more minutes if there are more questions as well. Bethany, are you good to go?
Yeah, hold on just 1 second.
There is one question from Rickson asking if y'all use any sea salt.
So I do actually use sea salt. I use C90. I'll mix it with my ryegrass when I overseed, and I don't do the recommended 50 pounds per acre, but I'll put out about 10 pounds per acre. And yeah, every time I throw out seed or overseeding, what have you, it's I try to include it. Just keep that trickle going.
At what point, once I've planted the last couple of years, I haven't really had all that much success, but in some, I guess, at what point do you let the cattle into the fields to let them graze for the first time on what you've planted to allow it to be able to come back multiple times?
I could take a stab at that. Yeah, that's a very critical thing to be paying attention to, and you know, depending on how early in the season it is, if, you know, say you just let's talk about oats. If it's early germination and it's come on quick, it very well may be grazable for us before the growing season's over, meaning that we could be getting some regrowth on that before that December 15th shutdown that we kind of figure on for when our forage stops growing for the winter. So we want to get on it as quickly as we can, but we don't want to damage the seedling. A good test for us is we'll go out and we'll kind of pull on those seedlings or those plants. By that time they should be more of a plant. We'll pull on those young plants, kind of simulating a grazing action and making sure that those plants don't pull up. They need to have enough of a root system that when that cow takes that bite, that she's going to cut that forage off and not pull the plant out. That's really critical. And if we're comfortable with that, we're going to look at moving in there and removing some of that forage with grazing. That first graze may be a little less pressure, meaning we probably wouldn't reduce our stalking rate much on that graze, but we may reduce our time there. We may only be there, instead of being there for maybe a 10 or 12 hour graze, we might be there for 6 hours, something like that, just to reduce the pressure on those plants if we think we're a little on the front end. We do try to be aggressive though, because that may be happening as early as November 10th or 15th. And we'd like to take the top off that plant because we would stimulate a lot of tillering of that plant and get a lot more forage growth before things shut down for the winter. So that's kind of how we look at it on initial fall grazing.
About how tall roughly when you're going out to test it?
It's gonna be those plants should be, I would say, 8 or 10 inches. We probably wouldn't be going in any shorter than that.
Thank you.
I think Bethany's ready now, and
Yes.
that you should be able to share your screen.
Mm.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. Okay, can everyone see it?
Looks good.
Okay, perfect.
Congratulations. So Terrence, if you don't mind, I'm gonna private message you and ask for your address, and we will send you a t-shirt this week. Does anyone else have any other questions before we are done?
I do not, I'm kind of a organic, so I don't like the idea of using any strange fertilizers. Not for any particular reason other than I don't know a lot, but what I do know doesn't really sound great for milk in my experience, because I'm making all natural cheese, and I can see what either way in that I'm also doing a bit of rotational system with chickens, and I don't have nearly the density of chickens that I do land, and so I've just started moving the chickens around in just a very small area of my pasture. I don't have the science down in any capacity of knowing when to bring the animals in and not. I'm just kind of learning as I go. But when I did use the no-till drill last year, the areas where my chickens had been, the grass was a foot taller than everything in the surrounding areas. So I know that with chickens, like they are high, like their waste is high in NPK. So like your chicken pellets that you're using in the seeding as an experiment, I imagine that would make a dramatic difference, but I don't use any other type of fertilizer. Does anyone know of a like an organic or a less, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily need to be organic. I guess I don't like the idea of using urea as nitrogen. Does anyone know of another source that might be a good idea to use as fertilizer when I do the no-till drilling to see if I would have the same kind of results as the chickens, since I don't have enough chickens for that kind of experiment?
Well, I mean, the pelletized chicken litter is available. That can be put through a drill, you know. Otherwise, I've heard of people rigging up little spray systems. So when the coulters open the ground, you know, it's applying a liquid fertilizer. Most times it's a fish type fertilizer or something like that, you know, something with a little bit of nitrogen load. In the case of the fish amino acids, it's the nitrogen again is bound in amino acid form, so you're not putting out an inorganic form of nitrogen, and so it's, you know, not bound to salts and different things like that. But I don't know. Anybody else have anything?
Sarah? Hey, this is Roberta McEwen. Go talk to Sarah Keller at Bayou Farms around Ville Platte. I've seen her do the most amazing regenerative work with using her chickens to improve some land phenomenally. Get more chickens. If that's your way of going about it, I've never seen anything do the fabulous job that chickens can do. Okay.
It's outstanding. I just got a contraption to be able to get more chickens. It's just real labor intensive.
Well, and along that same line, yeah, I mean, chicken litter, you know, has a tremendously high nitrogen content, and your P and K to go with it. If you could source some of that, and I know that stuff's, you know, pricing right along with fertilizer, so it's, you know, we have a particular place, our heifer farm, where we feed very little grain on. I would love to be putting a ton or 2 tons of the acre out every year, just looking at the nutrients that I'm moving off that place in grown animals. You know, the system, because I'm not bringing grain in, the system's not taking in outside nutrients. So chicken litter would be a great way to do that. It's just been cost prohibitive for me to put it on at that rate every year. But it would, you know, when I do the math on the nutrients I'm pulling off, it would take a ton of chicken litter.
Yeah.
Just to replace
Sarah,
that.
I have been on a waiting list for chicken litter for 3 years. I don't want to go to the trouble of actually raising chickens, but oh my goodness, I don't think you could do anything better under your circumstances. I have seen phenomenal improvements. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just learning all of everything, but that I have a serious broom sedge that comes in, and if I knew what I know right now, I wish that I would have just like clipped all my pastures a couple months ago, but I didn't. So I have like 4 6-foot tall broom sedge in these big patches all over my damn pasture, and I just learned what that is, and just learned that it's an indicator of poor soil health, low organic matter. And I had a buddy, I just kind of did an accidental experiment where I had 200 meat birds for 6 weeks in one particular place that I kind of moved around in my pasture, and I don't have a single blade of broom sedge left in that area. If anybody wants to put your email in this chat, I can just like send an aerial photo of how incredible just one setting with chickens did, what it did to my pasture.
Sarah Keller had a series of pasture walks where she put several thousand chickens, marched them across a electronet fencing of 164 feet, and she did thousands of feet with that, and it was like life, night and day.
Yeah.
But look, Rome wasn't built in a day. Soils don't change in a day. It took 3 years for me to see a difference, but we've had consistently improved pastures. Okay, I have a grandbaby looking at me. I'm going to sign off.
Thank you, Roberta.
Sarah,
Okay.
I wanted to add to that, Sarah. Something that we found in that pasture that you came and saw in Jackson a long time ago was by tightening our pastures. We also had broom sedge and some other weed type plants. By tightening our pastures even more and even more, the cattle trampled those weeds, and it really built fertility. You could see, you know, a green spot here and a green spot here and a green spot here. Well, as we did that over 4 years, the green spot started merging together, and we saw almost no weeds after that.
Great. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that I'm not grazing. I have too much space for too few animals.
Definitely, we found that to be a huge success, was tightening our paddocks. Ellen, I wanted to mention our next webinars. We have 4 more to go. One of them, what is the one next week, Ellen?
Next
Remind
week
me of
will
this.
be soil health with Dr. Lisa Foltz with LSU. And she's just going to be going into, from a scientist standpoint, what is under the ground and why is it important?
Yes, and we have brochures and registration on our website for all of those. We're going to be talking about soil health on leased land, when and how to graze. And then also the last one is going to be about NRCS programs and systems that are available, like Marty was talking about, or someone was talking about, like CRP and NRCS money that you can use to help with these systems being put in place.
And all of these videos, they are being recorded, and we'll put them up on our YouTube page, hopefully by end of day of the day that we have the session. So if you want to share them with your friends or watch them again, these are open and be able to view for as many times as you want. And always, we're open for questions. We can connect you with the producers that spoke today, as well as any other board members we have in our organization. But thank you all for coming today, and we hope that this was beneficial, and hope to see you in our next few workshops.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I want to know when we can tour a water buffalo dairy.
Yes, that was my question.
I was
We got
gonna
a
announce
fancy walk coming up.
Any and all of you are welcome to come anytime. I feel like I'm reinventing the wheel all the time. I would love to connect with fellow farmers in this zone, in this area, wanting to grow forages year round, anything, everything. Like, I just learned what this broom sedge is, and I've had it for 2 years, like 2 years. There's so much to learn. I would love anybody to come here who knows what's going on and could share their information. So y'all can, I'll put my email in here right now, and I'll put my phone number. Y'all just text me or call me. I'm pretty much here all the damn time. And even if it's just like the day before, if I'm here, you're welcome to come by. I'll show you around. The buffalo are awesome.
Heck yeah.
What's your name?
Sarah Rowland. I'm in St. Francisville, Louisiana, in West Louisiana. I'm just south of Woodville.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We hope to see you next week.
All right. Thank y'all.